We are live.
We are live.
We are live.
Did I say welcome to the main event?
Run that thing back, bro. You mad?
Oh,
Man.
Behave before you talk about what I'm talking about, yeah?
Disclaimer!
Run that thing back. Nah, man, stay there in your corner, man. Run that thing back, fam. I don't want to hear nothing from you.
My first question is like, how much research are you putting into a project like this, especially when you're directing, writing, and producing? And
A lot.
What form
Yeah, a
does it
lot of
take?
research. I mean, the first thing you do is you go back and you look at all the comics. I mean, the thing is, there's such a history, like with Batman, right? And I feel like it's important because I've been a fan since I was a kid. And so when you come to doing a movie, you have to have a certain level of a healthy sort of dose of fear as you're approaching it, because there have been great movies. And so to me, the research was really important. I spent a lot of time reading comic books because the stories are so kind of based in noir. I was looking at like noir movies, gangster movies, serial killer movies, and then reading stuff. I was reading All the President's Men because this idea of corruption, and reading about Paul Manafort and sort of laundering money and shell schemes. And I was just trying to figure out, okay, so if this city's so corrupt, how does that work? I was reading about Whitey Bulger. And so, yeah, there was a lot of research that went into it, and it was from so many different sources.
Did the noir tone derive just from the detective aspect of Batman?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, it was, I mean, the research took me all the way back to Bob Kane and Bill Finger. I mean, I started there. I was looking at those comics and sort of all of it sort of born out of a noir sensibility. And I think this idea of doing the world's greatest detective and him really being a detective. And, you know, I mean, one of the movies that was important for me was Chinatown, was looking at that and the way that Los Angeles in that story is a character. And I thought, well, that's really what Gotham needs to be in this. And so the way that Jake Gittes is trying to sort of swim against the tide of corruption and get to the bottom of the sort of the mystery behind these murders, or the murder that took place, all of that I thought could inform tonally what we might do. And so all of that really comes from the comics initially, and then just through my exploration of noir.
In terms of recreating a Batman, recreating Gotham, recreating all of the characters inside, like, what do you think is the biggest pressure that comes along with like directing the most anticipated movie of the year?
Well, I think it's to find a way to hold on to and honor the things that people love about the characters and the things that make them kind of mythic and iconic, while at the same time leaning very hard into something that feels fresh and new, because that's the challenge of doing a Batman movie, right? Which is that you have a character that's been around for over 80 years, and these characters in general that are in Gotham, the idea of approaching them in such a way that sort of connects to the reason that people love them, while at the same time showing them in a light that feels totally new. That's really hard. And I think for me, I wanted to lean into the imperfections of the characters. I wanted to lean into them as flesh and blood human beings, and think about, you know, when you think about Batman and what he's doing, it's actually a very dysfunctional idea. I mean, he decides he's going to become a vigilante because of what happened to him when he was 10. So each night he goes out and basically revisits the scene of the crime. He's looking for a fight every night. This doesn't seem very rational. You know, on the one hand, it's like, oh, what would you do? It's like, well, I don't know. Would you put on a cowl and cape and go out? And it's like, well, he does. And so that gave me this feeling that, especially in the early years, I figured if we did a year 2 story, he would not necessarily have to be very much in control yet. He could still be driven in ways by his personal animus that he wasn't fully aware of, that he's not really aware of how much his shadow side is driving him, how much putting on that mask and losing yourself in instinct might be bringing you very close to crossing the line that you've pledged yourself never to cross, and how that relates to the killer of the story, how that relates to the Riddler and what his motivations are, and how they're kind of, in a way, two sides of the same coin. So I think all of that felt like it would offer a fresh way to see these characters.
So if it was up to you and you could make as many Batman movies or TV shows, how long would it take you to tell your story, or what part of the story, like where would you go from here? How much would you do?
I mean, you know, for me, I set out to make sure that we didn't just do a chapter 1 because I didn't know if I'd get to do a chapter 2.
Mhm.
So I wanted to make sure that this was a complete experience, and I really wanted to create a Batverse here that felt distinctive and original and still iconic and mythic and the things that people love. And in doing that, it sort of set into motion a lot of characters who, while Batman wasn't in his origins, the other characters, the Rose Gallery characters are. So like one of the characters that we're doing a show for is Penguin, because I mean, Colin, who's so amazing in the movie.
Yeah, he's great.
He's really just, what's great is knowing the history and having something about like the iconography to say, okay, so he becomes the Kingpin. We know that, but we also know that that's not the version of this character yet. So how he ascends to becoming that character is a great sort of powerful mythic story. So that's one of the shows, we're doing a show for HBO Max that Colin's going to do that's about kind of like his American dream Gotham story, like the moment where he's kind of underestimated. People don't realize, but he does, that he has the potential in him to become the Kingpin. And so you see this moment in the power vacuum lead that comes out at the end of this movie, that he's grabbing for power and he's starting to assert himself, and you're starting to see that character for the first time that you know from the comics and from the myth. And so there's that character, and there's Arkham and what's implied by Arkham. And of course, there's the continuation of this story, meaning Batman's story never ends. It's not as if crime is ever going to end or corruption is ever going to end in Gotham City. And it was important that this story, even though I want it to end in a complete sort of beginning, middle, end, so that you had the experience, it had to end in a way where you knew it went on, because even if I wasn't going to make another movie, Batman's story continues. Yeah. He is doomed and compelled to continue to go on this journey to become this iconic hero. And what's exciting is that if the audience embraces this movie, and it feels hopefully like they will, I think Rob is amazing, then we'll be able to tell more of those stories.
Since you touched on the Penguin spin-off series,
yeah,
is there any information you can give me around the GCPD spin-off series? And
yeah, the GCPD thing, that is sort of, that story has kind of evolved. We've actually now moving more into the realm of exactly what would happen in the world of Arkham as it relates coming off of our movie, and some of the characters, again, in their origins that you would, almost leaning into the idea of, it's like a horror movie or like a haunted house that is Arkham. The idea of, again, the way that Gotham is a character in the movie, I really want Arkham to exist as a character so that you'd go into this environment and encounter these characters in a way that feels really fresh. And so in our work on Gotham, that story started to evolve, and it started feeling like, wait, we should really lean into this. And that's kind of where that's gone.
Okay, well, that's great. That's about all I've got time for. Really appreciate your work on the movie.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'm sure everyone's going to love it. Yeah, and hopefully get to speak again.
Yeah, absolutely. Good talking to you, man.
See you.